In this episode, you'll discover your estimated heart age compared to your calendar age.
Feel the grip of the oar handle, smooth yet firm in your hands. Taste the salt of your own sweat and the occasional splash of water. It's all part of the journey. Welcome to another episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Each week, our host, Masters rowing coach Rebecca Caro, dives deep into the world of Masters rowing. Whether you're on the water or in the gym, join us to become a faster master. Let's go rowing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Rebecca Caro, and today I've got a very special guest who's going to be joining us to talk about coronary artery diseases in Masters rowers. Why? Because it hit him like a ton truck between the eyeballs. And his journey is what he wants to share so that you don't have to suffer similarly. Please welcome to the show, David Frost, who is a Masters rower, the author of both Kabooma and Burden or Banish, his new book. And he describes himself as an aging endurance athlete and a journeyman in coronary artery disease learning. David, welcome to the show.
Wow, I'm glad to be here. And as we say, it's better to be seen than viewed relating to coronary health. So thank you.
Now, you very kindly shared some things with me about your own personal health. And because you are an author and you're an incredible sharer and a very diligent student, why don't you kick off by telling us about your journey and why we're talking about this today?
So I was told by your colleague, Marlene, that for men, your tune-up needs a little more work at about the age of 70. And I said, I'm different. You know, my times on the rowing machine are great. And, I get asked to row down into lower lettered races. That's all cool. So after the San Diego Crew Classic, when I was 71 years old, I was out for a morning practice and I felt discomfort in my chest like I'd never felt before. Now, never having felt angina, I'm told that's the way to pronounce angina, something wasn't right. So one of my takeaways, Rebecca, is even we folks known to be quiet, known to be stoic, known to be gnarly, if we sense something in our bodies, particularly in our chest region, we should do something about it. So I said, wow, I'll talk to the boss, my wife, and she said, call the doc. So call the doc and get in and have some tests done. And the short version is when you get a text message from your doctor after a procedure, that generally is going to be interesting news. So the message was, don't be alarmed. You have the coronary arteries of a 92-year-old. So now, does that mean, is that a death knell? Not necessarily, but it kind of implies that there some intervention might be appropriate. And what is really on my journey, as you mentioned, I learned that Masters rowers at the age of 20 can have the start of heart disease. Now, what is disease? It is dis-ease or not being the way it should be. So there is a score, and don't want to drop to, I know the supplemental package that you're going to share will have lots of numbers and details, but there is a score called an Agatston Score for calcification, which is a proxy for heart health. Our bodies get inflamed. Isn't it ironic? One of the paradoxes for rowers is exercise is so good for you, but too much exercise is not good for you. And one of the key things, and sports cardiologists say it's going to take another 10 years before we better understand the dose response curve for our endurance efforts to help us without being toxic. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So what our bodies do when we have inflammation, there are 5 things that cause inflammation: environmental stress, toxins, stress, too much sunlight, smoking, and exercise. So by exercise, we're creating a chance for our bodies to send not just calcium, but other Band-Aids to where there's inflammation. Well, when you have inflammation in your arteries, not just your coronary arteries, but that's the most important one for us today, there can be an issue. And there can be an issue if you work too hard, too fast for too long. There can also be an issue if you have a genetic predisposition to inflammation. So in the detailed package, there are some very detailed blood measurements, which are beyond just normal low density cholesterol, LDL, which can share if you have a predisposition for building up calcium in your arteries, and particularly in your coronary arteries, and particularly in your left ventricle, the one we worry about. And we've all heard the term widowmaker. So that was kind of my wake-up call. So my journey started. I thought everything was tickety-boo, Rebecca, until you get a message that says, well, your arteries are 21 years older than you. Yeah. Now this is an outlier. All the other markers from my metabolic reading, my insulin sensitivity, metabolic syndrome, all these wonderful things, we're doing a good job. But there's almost always a kryptonite. And what I'd like to share for risk management, being a student of our endeavor, like Olympic champions are, I'm not, but Olympic champions are students of their endeavor, and they surround themselves with resources. Why not go find out if you have a kryptonite? Now, if I had known 40 years ago that I had a kryptonite called lipoprotein A, a very inflammatory marker for which there's no pill yet or no shot, no mRNA, would I have adjusted my too hard, too fast for too long, marathon running, weightlifting, rowing, bicycling? Yeah, I would have. So knowledge is power, isn't it, for risk management? We can't avoid risk. Life is risky. I have a neighbor who reminded me that we have a disease called aging the day we're born, but what do we do with it, right? Or we can tell jokes because humor is good medicine. I'll ask one that I think is appropriate, Rebecca. Why don't we lie to cardiologists?
Well, I kind of feel like they've only just got to pull one little string and they've won that argument.
That's right. And cardiologists who tend to be younger than me, and they're vegetarians and don't exercise a lot. But anyway, why don't I lie to my cardiologist? Because he can always tell a fib.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, rowers are extremely interesting people, aren't they? Rowers tend to have a much higher incidence of afibrillation. So isn't it ironic? People that don't exercise have higher rates of the heart going crazy, getting mixed signals. And the issue of aFiB is not aFiB. It's that stroke and heart attacks are much, much higher if you have aFiB. And I'm at the age where aFiB tends to rise up. So luckily, never found it. Hopefully that continues. I got other kryptonite like I shared. But for male elite rowers, they have aFiB at a rate 7 times the general population. Women, not quite so much, yet still higher than the general population. So too much of a good thing when it's too hard for too long is not the dose response that we want and need to live long and thrive. And isn't it amazing that sports cardiologists who have done research for decades say we need another decade to really give you clinical guidance as to what appropriate duration and intensity of exercise is, so that you still can compete, because we're talking fasters masters. And yet when we in America, I don't know the standards in other countries of your listeners, but in America, Joe Sixpack or Jill Sixpack is told to do low intensity exercise for 150 minutes a week. That's about 6 med hours. Now, if you do higher intensity, it's half of that, but still, say a med hour a day. Geez, most rowers do much more than that on one morning of rowing, don't they?
They do.
So we may be actually, if we're not careful, doing ourselves a disservice by that extra volume. We know we're a volume sport, but if we do too much volume for too long, too hard, we can have calcification, which is a proxy for heart disease. So I have heart disease. I'm a proud card-carrying heart disease person, but almost every rower has some heart disease based on the inflammation that we cause. What do we do about it? Well, I would like not to take the most prescribed pill on earth, a statin, but I was told that, and I'm taking a statin when my low density numbers are, most people would die for them. I'm taking a statin when my LDL was 60 or less. So I'm taking a statin because it apparently helps with the inflammation process, and it apparently helps make sure that the calcium that's there is solidified. You actually want a ring of calcium, not a pus or a
furry mass,
because that is what can lead to strokes and things like that. So the bad news is I have a whole lot of calcium. The good news is apparently mine is fairly stable. And yes, I'm taking the intervention to try to keep it stable so that I'm around for a while. Now, if we were talking about heart age, there are metrics that we'll have in the package that you'll share. There's some interesting heart age metrics. The more elastic our arteries are throughout our bodies, the lower a thing called pulse wave velocity is. So pulse wave velocity, accurately measured by a thing called a tonometer, tells how elastic your arteries are. And rowers tend to be very proud of their elastic arteries because they do a lot of, they do spurts, they do power 20s, they do high intensity finishes for their events. The lower your pulse wave velocity, the better your heart age is. And so that's number one. Conversely, your heart rate variability, the higher it is, despite your training, the better you're feeding and restoring your body, and you're not always in fight or flight with high intensity exercise. So two measures that I would encourage people to think about getting measured and trying to trend them, perhaps with a fitness device, are to monitor your heart rate variability. It could be a ring, it could be a watch, it could be measured.
An app. There's an app, yeah.
Right. But the other one, so that's heart rate variability. The other thing, you kind of need a measurement. And you want a measurement to be below 10 meters per second for pulse wave velocity. The more rigid your arteries, the higher the stiffness of your arteries, the more prone you are to high blood pressure and cardiac events. So those are two numbers where there are ranges that I would encourage all fasters, masters, rowers to be aware of and to just kind of monitor the trends, not to be anal about it, but to be aware. The harder you train, your heart rate variability is probably going to drop, but your pulse wave velocity should also drop unless you're adding to the calcification and the stiffness from too much, too hard, too fast. So isn't that an interesting paradox? We're doing good stuff. And if there ever was a statement that is true, it is that regardless of how good or bad your heart health is, exercise is still good for you. The heart is an amazing fist-sized, if I can look at my cheat sheet, it's a 1 watt transmitter that's responsible for somewhere between 3 and 4 billion heartbeats in your lifespan. It's got an electrical field that's 100 times stronger than your brain. At rest, it pumps over 5 liters a minute, and an elite rower probably gets up to 30 liters a minute. That's some serious work, isn't it? And then we start to talk about, okay, maybe our aorta shouldn't be very elastic, and maybe it shouldn't be too enlarged. So there's some studies of which I took part a year ago, Dr. Churchill in Boston. They're very interested in the size of your ascending aorta and whether you might be prone to a rupture in the future because it's so enlarged. So again, too much of a good thing may not necessarily be wonderful. Each of our heartbeats is about 2 inches of blood going out to 60,000 miles of piping. Isn't that amazing?
Isn't that amazing?
60,000 miles of piping. And another thing that I want is, because we're all proud of our skeletal muscles, let's think about a type of muscle that has much more mitochondria than skeletal muscle. Our cardiac muscle has much more many more mitochondria in each cardiac cell. So I say, we're all learning about how important mitochondria are. Well, I'm arguing that the most important. So as we learn more and more about that amazing 1-watt transmitter, that fistful of vitality, responsible for VO2 max and responsible for many, many good things, with technology and with interventions, I would ask all your listeners to consider doing a couple things. I say, go ahead and get that proxy test, the calcium scan.
Yeah.
Now, you could have no calcium and still have heart issues, but it's a very credible proxy, a biomarker for coronary disease, meaning atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease, meaning hardening and tightening of your coronary arteries because of deposits. And we want those deposits to be stable. So it's really, really important to be aware of some things as a student of our endeavor. It's really important to try to get a pulse wave velocity to check how your peripheral arteries are doing, because there's 30,000 miles of arteries, 30,000 miles
of veins.
Some large, amazing number. So it's really important to know that. It's really good to monitor your heart rate variability. I would also argue, in addition to getting a calcium CT scan, which may cost a little money, but maybe certain countrymen listening get it as part of their healthcare system. To me, it is so important. It changed my life 1.5 years ago. Luckily, the discomfort I felt was, the doctor thinks it wasn't angina. He thinks it was from a virus. I had just seen our grandkid, and I had a chest virus. But there's some other things that can cause chest discomfort. Could be gastrointestinal, could be stress, could be your vagus nerve acting up. And we all know how important the vagus nerve is. It goes right through the chest, and it's the biggest nerve system in your body. So there are many things that cause chest discomfort that aren't heart attacks. Yet, I please ask your folks, if you sense something, don't be stoic, don't be gnarly, don't be in denial, get it checked out. Almost all cases of chest discomfort, like me, are not heart attack or disease, but it's far better to know that and maybe learn about your amazing pumping system than find a widowmaker downstream.
David, that's an incredible insight. So individual risk factors are individual. Do you have a sort of self-scan process that you use on your hard training days?
Yes, I do. And it's not just heart rate or wattage, depending on the measurements that you have. It really is perceived exertion. On a particular day, being mindful of rest and hydration. If it just feels like that's enough, the cardiologist says, don't be stupid. We all know aging endurance athlete who have pushed through and had heart attacks on the ergometer, for instance, because they may have had some deposits, and the heart just wasn't getting enough to do what you were asking it to do. So perceived exertion, Rebecca, is a very good self-scan. But then I also am mindful on recovery. As we get older, we're not supermen and superwomen anymore. We take longer to recover. Heart rate variability, or a significant other or a spouse that says, you're a little snippety, I think you're overtrained. Overtraining as you get older is not a wise thing by any means. So self-scan, definitely monitoring your recovery, checking the heart rate variability, and maybe spending a little bit more time, not in denial, but in being tuned into your perceived exertion. Yeah.
Now we have a question from Captain Strauss USA, who says, what age should you start getting the calcium scan and the PWV test?
Great question. And in America, clinicians don't want to give it. They like to respond to crises, not prevent them. I don't mean, I'm sure you have many doctors and nurses in in the community, but I do say with a little bit of snideness that I wish we would be more preventative. So the answer for a calcium scan, even though heart disease can start in your 20s, you need some buildup in order to have a kind of a feel for it. So I say for men, calendar age 40, maybe women can get by to 50. It's maybe a few $100 US to have that done. You only need it done once, because once you get calcium, you got it. It's not going to reduce unless you have a rotor-rooter remount, and nobody wants to open up your heart to remount your coronary artery. At least I don't, So that's for the coronary, the CT scan. It's a little bit of X-ray, but shouldn't be harmful, and it could be powerful. And it certainly was a big factor in my decision. So for the pulse wave velocity, probably about 40, middle age. Yeah. Because, the aging process, we change. We want to change at a different trajectory than non-rowers, right? So I think 40 is good for the guys, maybe ladies 40, maybe 50, but it really is good to know. And I just wish that I had not waited till age 71 to have both of those done. Now, in the case of my pulse wave velocity, I'm a young man. In the case of the proxy for heart disease, I'm not a young man. So there are many studies which can give you cause for concern or cause for, yay, I'm okay, that will put in that supplemental package, Rebecca. But yeah, let's say 40 for guys and 50 for ladies. I'm a layman. I'm not a doctor. And yet, boy, if I knew at 40 that I had extreme calcification and good pulse wave velocity, guess what? I would have exercised, but I wouldn't have I would have not violated the 80-20 rule that we're now, when 50 years ago in college, we were probably 60% steady state and 40% mid to high intensity, 60-40. Right. What is it now? 80-20, and it may change to 85-15, kind of a Pareto's law in the future, once sports cardiologists learn more about our amazing cardiovascular, cardiorespiratory systems. But in my particular case, it's life altering, not life changing. I'm still going to row. I'm still going to work out. I'm still going to go on long bike rides. But I'm going to listen to myself better and not be pretending I'm Superman because I have kryptonite, and probably almost all of our listeners have one.
Yeah. I do think it is a factor of the human condition, is that we are slow to recognize when our bodies are moving into the next stage. And even if for example, as simple as, should I be shortening the length of my oars? Should I be getting more recovery between workouts? Should I be not doing 5 races a day, but maybe just doing 3? And again, it's very individual. And we do have a tendency, particularly those of us with the sort of type A competitive mindset, to be in denial rather than in acceptance and reading the signs.
Boy, Rebecca, that is so true. And I offer for the gents who are listening, at about age 70, unless you're extraordinary, you're going to find out that you're not immortal. And ladies, it's going to take longer. But you're going to find out you're not immortal, and you don't have to be faster than you were in college. You're not chasing yesterday. You just want to be faster than the folks you're in your letter race, right? Or if you race down, that's cool too. But as extreme high intensity, I would argue that high intensity interval training more than once a week is not healthy in anyone's dose response curve. I would share that a Norwegian 4 times 4 minute, 3 minute rest, VO2 max, awesome, because you're at maybe 85%, but you're not red zone Tabata. So work on your VO2 max, but guess what? Part of VO2 max is what? Body mass. One of the things male rowers in particular are, I'm still pretty fit. Not your waist to hip ratio is not where it could be. So part of high blood pressure, part of VO2 max, of course, relative VO2 max is body weight related. It's, it's not even though we float, so, it's not like bicycling or running. We don't want to be carrying around too much white fat. It's just not good for you.
Now, talk to us a little bit about your new book.
So the first two books were generational. Kaboomer was for my generation, baby boomers. The second one was for Gen X, called Strong to Save, stressing the importance for rowers and non-rowers of resistance training. And I think we chat about that. You were nice enough to chat about that in a prior session. Third book, though, I'm not doing it generational. I'm doing it for all generations. It's Burden, ? Or Banish, meaning if we in America and probably in the developing countries that have too much food and too much opportunity to use their thumbs and not move, I call it glothic behavior. Two of the original sins of sloth and gluttony can be dealing with 80% of heart disease is preventable, or you can stave it off. But here we are waiting until we have a problem to have interventions, open up your chest, put in stents, do this, do that. Wouldn't it be better to start preventative measures, lifestyle measures, and of course, exercise to defer or perhaps even banish something that's preventable? America's top killer, and I believe the world's top killer, the number one cause of mortality in the world is atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease. Thankfully, it's not opioids. Thankfully, it's not warfare. Thankfully, it's not cancer. Although, as we're living longer but not living better with interventions, cancer is creeping up until we get a miracle moonshot. But we should be doing better. And rowers, because they're so mindful of their bodies, because they self-scan, because they're going to get past denial, hopefully we're going to contribute to banishing a preventable problem.
Well, your book will definitely be a serious contributor to that, because I know the depth of research that you do. And I'm sad that it had to be a personal journey, but I'm also happy that we're still talking. And thank you for bringing it to the rest of us, David.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. And if I could share just on the topic of gluttony, we had a wonderful sportscaster who has since passed from heart disease, unfortunately, Dick Enberg. His wife reminded us that stressed, STRESSED, spelled backwards, is desserts. So on the subject of gluttony, now rowers obviously move a lot, yay. But as we get older, it's okay to watch what our intake is of sugar. What leads to inflammation more than exercise? Sugar. Isn't that crazy? We need it. Our brain needs it. Our bodies need it, but we don't need simple sugar, which turns to fat. So just remember that stressed and desserts are
kind of equal and opposite, but no, they're not. They're identical, really, just read from the opposite angle. The other side of the coin. There we go.
There you go. There you go.
David, thank you for joining me. It's been an absolute delight to do a reasonably quick canter. Reminder to people, the book is called Burden or Banish. And I very much hope that we will continue our learning together. And any readers and watchers who have feedback, please send it over. David will share this packet of additional information, which I hope you will find useful, with links to places to find out more. Please join the Masters Rowing newsletter. There are over 7,000 people who join us once a week. And till next time, bye-bye.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your fellow rowers about the show. If you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.